Welcome to Voices and Visionaries, the podcast featuring the female forces in sports media. I'm Kelly Burke, and joining me today is Rhiannon Walker, NFL writer for The Athletic, covering the Washington football team, and she's rocking the NBA jacket. Rhiannon, I love it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's cold out here. I mean, you're in Florida, but it is cold in DC right now and raining. It's gross.
You are now in year 3, which is hard to believe, covering Washington's football team for The Athletic. How have you found that your approach has changed from back in year 1 to now year 3?
It's interesting because we are in this really weird space right now with COVID. But what I found from year 1 to even year 2, and what I was hoping to do in year 3, is that those conversations you have in the locker room are some of the most important ones that you'll have, even if I'm not writing a story, even if I don't have anything in particular I'm thinking of. Just physically being there, letting guys see you. You never know who you'll bump into. I've been in the hallway, bumped into people, and they just felt like talking that day, and it worked out perfectly. And especially for me, I don't like texting. So when it comes to like sources and like hitting people up for things, it's like this weird apprehension, and I don't know why, because if I was in person I'd ask the question, but over the phone it has this sudden like, oh no, I can't do that. That was the biggest thing that I found was a difference for me. And in year 1, I found it's really hard to be an adult. That was the honest to God truth. At the time that I was going in my first season, it's my first time beat reporting since college. And I was actually in the midst of doing a home refinance. I was doing a renovation of my house. And a lot of the work I was doing myself at the time. And so there was this 5-week stretch where I was really killing myself to get the stuff with the house done for the refinance and the renovation to be finished. But then also with a professional beat, and especially in sports, it demands a lot of you. You can't really have too many other things happening simultaneously. And when I say I learned the locker room value, one of the things that I did when I was doing that is that I wouldn't shrug on my obligations for work. What I would do is I was like, okay, so Sunday, Monday, I know that I'm gonna have open locker room. I know the stories I want to write. I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna talk to all the people I need to talk to for the rest of the week and be done with it, so that I can go to practice on Wednesday, but then I can get out of there, whatever the case may be. But that's just, I would lose like 3 days of like practice, even though I'm getting the stories done. The other part of the job of making relationships and fostering those inroads, I wasn't doing. And so my first off season with the Senior Bowl, the NFL Combine, organized training activities, rookie minicamp, that's when I really realized the power of physically being there, of understanding that element, of understanding that guys will talk to you when they see you. And they don't know what you're doing in your personal life. They don't know that I'm not like just dipping because I don't want to be there. It's not that. It's like I have another thing that I need to do. And that's not something that they see, but they see me physically there. And even something as simple as being myself. I mean, as you can see, like, this is very much me. Like, guys will see me walk around in the locker room with any member of my Bombers. And one of the things I found is that when you are yourself, it creates conversations where you can have authentic chats with people that allow them to get an idea of who you are, and they can feel more comfortable talking to you. Another thing about me, I have a terrible sweet tooth. And Kelly, I'm sure this is not maybe your favorite part either, but I hate going in the locker room. It's not my favorite thing in the world to do. But I found a way to be in there without it being weird. I would bring like Starburst with me, weirdly enough. But I could focus on it, so like I don't have to look around basically and accidentally see something, and it's just like, I didn't mean to do that. My bad. I'm really, really sorry. But what it did is that there are guys in the locker room. I mean, they're professional athletes, but they like candy too. And so they would come to me like, hey, Ree, do you have some Starburst? Do you have some Skittles? Do you have chocolate? It's like, actually, I do. And we just start talking. And so it wasn't a ploy to get people to come up to me. It was like, naturally, I just don't want to be looking around the locker room, and this gives me something to do with my hands and my eyes. And it created these different pathways for me to have conversations. So then I'm talking about different candies, or guys would tell me about like different places in their hometowns that they like to eat and stuff like that, because I love to travel. So that was the biggest difference. It's just, you have to be there. It's not something you can shrug on. It's not something where even if you're getting the stories up, it's good enough, because quite frankly, what it comes down to is who's telling you what, who's opening up to you the most, and is that person someone that like has a lot of sway, a lot of import within the team, and then within like the fan base and stuff like that, so you can write those really good stories. That was what I found to be the biggest difference between year 1 versus year 3.
That ability to be yourself, is that something that you've always had, or is that something that you sort of found as you got older?
I want to say I was always myself, but I don't think that's actually true. When I was little, I've always been a tomboy. And I'm fine with being a tomboy. I'm fine with being a woman who's really athletic or who's a girl who's really athletic. And I was very good at school too. I mean, I was an all-A student essentially when I was in elementary school. I had a few B's, but by and large, I was really, really smart. It really wasn't until I got to middle school and high school, and these were two private schools, where I guess I tried to be different. Like, I didn't have my same friends that I had grown up with for 7 years and like who knew like, well, Rhiannon's a tomboy, but Rhiannon's like really, really cool and stuff like that. And it was a private school, like, I tried to dress up more, like we had chapel and things of that nature, and dressing in skirts and dresses was never really my thing. So, I mean, that was a very painful, like, growing experience and stuff like that. And quite frankly, the other thing is that because I dressed like such a tomboy, there was a point, I got called a lot of homophobic slurs actually when I was in middle school and high school. Really? I did. And it made me not want to be myself as much, like trying to be more feminine, which again, I can be now. I finally figured it out. But like at that time, like it was tough. And I really resented that I was not able to dress as I wanted to and be comfortable without like someone saying something about it. So then I got to college and I kind of got back to that. I looked at middle school and high school, honestly, it's like, I just want to get to Maryland and I need to do what I need to do. So I got the grades to get there. I think I finished with like a 3.75 or something like that. Mm-hmm. But I always knew I wanted to do that. And I wanted to be around people that accepted me for who I am. And I got that again when I got to college. And I kind of figured out the whole thing of being myself. I mean, I think I'm pretty funny and I think I'm a pretty nice person. And I think that, people are accepting of the fact that like, Rhiannon's thing is not to wear makeup. I really don't. I can't remember the last time I wore makeup, actually, Kelly. I really can't. It's not my thing. Like my hair is always the same way. Like I figured out a hairstyle that works for me, and like I don't really get too adventurous and stuff like that. But in being myself is like I just got far more comfortable. I think people understood. Like people got more comfortable around me because I was more comfortable. I wasn't trying to be somebody who I wasn't or look like somebody who I wasn't or doing things that I really had not done up to that point in time. And when people are comfortable around you, they enjoy being around you. And I enjoy being around myself more as that person. And so I took advantage of that. And, quite frankly, going back to your last question, one of the things that I think has played to my advantage is that I am a woman that looked like I played basketball. I really did when I don't know if you saw on Twitter yesterday, but it's like, for former athletes, like post your former pictures and then like what you're doing now.
Yeah.
And I did used to play basketball, and I played basketball at a pretty high level too. And so now when I'm in the locker room, there, as you know, there are not really that many people in journalism who like just played sports. There are a lot of us who are like really smart at sports, but like in terms of people that actually like played and like then got into sports journalism, there's not as much there. So I actually think that's kind of an advantage for me because like some of the guys know, like, no, Ree's a good basketball player. Like they've invited me to play basketball with them, which is another way to connect that other journalists in the room don't have going for them. So it was a process, and it took some growing up, some phases of not being comfortable to get back to, I really don't care if I'm not the mold of what a woman at 27 should look like, or like if I don't feel like accentuating this element of myself, I'm going to dress what makes me comfortable, and I'm going to dress in a way that allows me to do what I want to do effectively. And I don't really think about it too much anymore. That's where I stand at this point.
That NBA, like the old school logo, I love that. It's such a good look.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
There's been a lot going on this year, not only in the NFL, but with Washington's football team, not only on the field, but off the field. When you think about just COVID, the name change, Ron Rivera's cancer, Dan Snyder, the sexual assault allegations, there's all sorts of stuff to unpack there. How have you navigated such an unusual season when, frankly, some of the stuff directly affected you?
To answer your question, I'm still dealing with it to a certain extent. It's hard, especially when really all you want to do is your job. And it's not just the sexual harassment stuff is obviously the thing that most directly affects me. But for instance, with Ron Rivera's cancer, I lost my grandmother last year to pancreatic cancer. I lost one of my, who was essentially my grandmother's sister. I lost her to ovarian cancer 5 years ago. She didn't get to see me graduate from college, though that was something that we had talked about very often. So when it was announced that he got cancer, I mean, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I've had a lot of people in my life have cancer, and I've had a lot of people in my life die from cancer. I actually cried about it because Ron Rivera as a coach and as a person, more specifically as a person, has been really, really good to me. To your point about the sexual harassment stuff, He's been very good there. The team and several people reached out to me from the organization as well too. It made me very sad to see somebody who, from my own personal interactions with him and those of people around him who have spoken about him, to say that he's like this really upstanding guy, this really good guy, this guy who cares, to see him get cancer, it doesn't make sense to me. It never has made sense to me, and I really battle with that. That was very hard. It was just like one of those things where it's like, why? And of course there's COVID. I told you before we started recording that I'm an extrovert. All of this seclusion is no good for me, like mentally, emotionally speaking. Like, this has been a really hard year. And even, for instance, my alma mater, Maryland, asked me to write about mental health, and I told them that I've been feeling all types of ways. I've been upset, like frustrated, like I feel like I'm procrastinating more, and I can't really wrap my head around certain things as much as I used to. And I talked to them about like imposter syndrome and feeling like I'm not the same person that was like breaking news the way I was last year, even earlier this year, before all these things started to happen. And it's very frustrating when you're one of those people that feels like you've had success, but you want to like continue to do better in your career. And it wasn't until I did my cycle review, looking back at the last 6 months, with my boss, that I sat there and said, no wonder I can't concentrate. No wonder I can't focus on anything when, like you said, like the team has had a name change conversation, which is not not something to take lightly. Like when you talk about a name that is inherently racist, and there's a lot of people that want to argue it down and everything else like that, and, not consider the group of people being most affected by it, how they feel about the entire thing. It's really frustrating to have that conversation. It's really frustrating when something that is extremely personal and that happened to you a year ago that you've tried to move on from gets brought back up again, and there's more to it even still. And you try to I didn't try to get in front of it. I let the Washington Post break that story. I knew the story was coming, and I let them have their story first, and then I wrote my firsthand story after the fact, because I respected the reporting that they had done to the point where I didn't want to undermine it. That's really, really difficult. It's hard. It's really hard. And it's really frustrating. Like I said, you just want to do your job. That's all I want to do. I just want to do my job. And I want to do it well. And it's hard when you're not operating at 100% to be able to do your job. And especially when you don't want to be a part of the story. I've said this, I really don't like attention. That's not my thing. I'm kind of a background person. And that's okay with me. It really is okay with me. So that was a struggle in and of itself. It's hard that I still have 144 messages sitting in my phone that I haven't responded to, because opening it up means revisiting that time period. But there's also the element of, I want to thank people for thinking of me and taking the time to reach out to me and stuff like that. And feeling really bad about that as well too. It really is hard. And I'm constantly frustrated with myself. Like, it's not for lack of trying not to be, it's not for lack of trying to understand why it is, but I keep saying it's hard. I don't know another way to put it. Sometimes, like, there's anxiety that goes with it. There's so much that comes with like covering a team and being a part of the news that deals with the team, and knowing how much focus it takes to do this, and knowing that your focus isn't all the way there because of things that have been out of your control. I mean, it sucks, to be honest with you. It really, really does. And sometimes I don't even know if I'm doing the right thing, like how I'm handling it. Like, I don't know if I think I should have taken more time than I did. I said that in my cycle review, that I haven't processed things the way I needed to, or the way they deserve to be processed. And I think sometimes my work is suffering to a certain extent because of it. And it's not intentional. It really isn't. It's just, sometimes it sneaks up on you in ways you would never imagine. And you never know, and it's no way to tell somebody so that they can anticipate how on a given day you're going to feel, or whatever the case may be. So it's been a tough year, to be honest with you. It's been a really hard year. I kind of want it to be over to a certain extent.
I'm so sorry. I wish we weren't virtually doing this, that I could just give you a big hug right now. But I mean, just speaking for other women in our industry, I just want to thank you, because I mean, what you did took so much courage. And speaking as somebody that has been the victim of sexual harassment before and was too afraid, really early, dealt with it early in my career, but was too afraid to do anything or say anything. I just want you to know how many other women out there in our industry you're helping. And so I'm so sorry you're still dealing with this and feeling like this. And obviously it's a process, and it's not an overnight thing that is going to go away. But I'm here for you, and I think there's so many other women in our industry that are here for you.
I really appreciate that. And at the end of the day, I think I wouldn't say I'm the most religious person, but I do pray to God. I do believe in God, and I believe that there's a reason that all of this happened. Why exactly, I couldn't tell you. Maybe he felt like I was strong enough to be the kind of person to say something about it. And it's not that other people aren't strong. There's legitimate fears. And I even said it as like, I couldn't have done this without my colleagues pushing me to do this. I mean, that was a big part of it, is that I was never afraid that my company would let me go if I brought this up to them. I immediately told them about it. But I seriously hope that nobody else has had to deal with it, because like even right now, like sometimes just like the level of anxiety, like the feeling of like drowning. I keep saying like, and I'm sorry, I keep saying that's unnecessary filler, but just that feeling of drowning, that inability to focus, that not feeling like myself. And I know what myself feels like. I'm the kind of person that can work all day and all night, and most days I can't sit to focus to do something enough to get it started, turning stuff in later than I really want to turn it in, or in a way that it's affecting my colleagues. And that's frustrating. That's really hard, because I'm not intending to do it on purpose. It's like I said, sometimes I don't know, but the point being, like I said, that this happened for a reason, and I'm willing to somewhat suffer with these side effects if it means that somebody else will think twice about saying something to somebody or trying to touch somebody inappropriately. Or it'll make companies realize that they need to be more supportive of their female employees or their male employees if that type of thing happens to them as well too. And within these sports leagues, that they need to realize that the cultures, the people that you allow to get away with these things, the culture that you foster is a direct implication on the leadership at top. Mm-hmm. I genuinely believe that. I really do. So I think there's been a lot of good. I've had a lot of people reach out. I'm actually very sad that I was not able to respond to as many people as I wanted to. And I saw most of the messages. Opening them up to say something was very challenging, much more challenging than I wanted it to be. But I really am thankful for the people that reached out, or the people that let me know that, they have been through similar things and this helped them. I really do appreciate them. It was not for lack of appreciation at all.
Rhiannon, I know there's not really an average week right now in COVID, but if you had to talk about what your week looks like regularly right now on the NFL beat and covering Washington's football team, what would you say the day-to-day looks like?
This team always keeps me on my toes, I'll tell you that much. My off days don't feel like off days too much, but a normal week in general, if nothing happens, like no random news breaks, nothing happens, like a regular week for me looks like most Sundays, Washington plays at 1:00. They just haven't been good these last few years, so they don't get the primetime games and things of that nature. So they play at 1:00. I think they have 14 1:00 games this year, which is awesome. I mean, as you know, like those early games, great. Get in, get out, boom. But then after the game, with the Zoom situation, I don't go down to the field. Usually in a regular year, I would go down to the field. I walk on the sideline. And like, you meet people there. You meet former players, you meet executives, you meet agents, you just meet family members. You meet all kinds of people down on the sideline. And with coronavirus, obviously, reasonably, we're not allowed on the sideline. Nobody's allowed on the sideline unless you are a player, a member of the team personnel. Understandable. And so one of the other challenges is that we're not really even supposed to be down in the bowl, so it's hard because you're just sitting in the press box and you don't hear things, you don't see certain things as well as you'd be able to from the sideline, or even if you're just standing in the bowl area of the stadium as well too. And so I usually get to the stadium about 9:30, which is the earliest I can get there is 9, and then I sit and I wait. I'll eat my breakfast and things of that nature, and kind of go through what my thoughts are on the game day and stuff like that. I let the game sort of dictate it. If it's like kind of in line with my thinking, all right, cool, fantastic. If it's not, then I shift gears. Most of what I do is feature writing. So I'm looking for one big thing that happened or one person that stood out. If I could get that, then I'm in great shape. and then, just get a few quotes because we'll do everything over Zoom. Previously, as people might imagine, we would go down to the locker room. So we would pretty much haul-tail. As soon as that clock went off, we're heading down to the locker room. We're listening to what would be Ron Rivera talking for 5-10 minutes, and then the locker room opens up immediately after he finishes talking, and you just go and talk to people. And like we were talking about earlier, just those relationships, you foster them even after a game. You kind of know guys that you can go to talk to and get some additional insight, or a guy that you saw really playing well that maybe he's not going to get as much attention as other players. You can go do a feature on him, but that's currency. And I don't want it to sound like, you do those things just so that you can foster good relationships so guys will be nice to you or talk to you. But no, I acknowledge that this player had a good performance. And so I go over and I talk to them. And if they remember that and they do talk to me afterwards, fantastic. If not, it is what it is. But, I'm doing my job. And then after that, on Mondays, what would usually happen is we'd go out to Ashburn, to the team facility. Ron Rivera would talk to us. We'd have an open locker room. But this year, we just get Ron. We don't have even the players talk to us on Mondays at this point in time. And then Tuesday's an off day. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is practice usually. So we have Ron Rivera runs an early ship, and I love it. I'm an early bird myself. So again, I love getting in. I like getting out. And so we would go to practice. We see the first 20 minutes of it before they go into team drills. Usually we would sit inside the media room, but now this year we just go out 20 minutes to Ashburn. And for me in my particular situation, that's about a 45-minute drive from my house. Drive 45 minutes there, watch for 20 minutes, drive 45 minutes back home. We jump on Zoom. It's not the end of the world, but I miss the face-to-face interactions. I miss the joking. I miss the guys. There are a lot of players I have not met. There's most of the coaching staff I have not met in person. If I ran into them at the combine, fantastic. But a lot of them I didn't. And it's just tough. Again, you're missing out on those feature stories, those unique stories that, for me in particular, I really, really care about. So, that's the life in the week of an NFL reporter, at least for me. That's how my week goes, essentially.
People who aren't necessarily in our industry, it's hard for them to understand how important that human interaction is with the players and with the coaches, because even like you said, if you're just doing an interview, they get used to seeing your face. And so there's that trust that's developed with them. And then that's how you start forming relationships. So I can't imagine the challenge of that, doing everything over Zoom. Have you found any particular way to help with connection over Zoom so far? I don't even know if it's possible.
Me, I'm going to make a joke one way or another. I'm going to make a joke about something at some point. I like to laugh. Even right now, I'm smiling. That's my natural disposition. I'm pretty optimistic and sunny and things of that nature. Jack Del Rio's been talking about Turnover Thursday, and they run this reel. And so I've been poking and prodding at him the last few weeks. He brought it up to me when I asked him one time, and he wouldn't tell me what they did with their what is it? Microsoft. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. PowerPoint. Hello, there it is. PowerPoint. They did a big PowerPoint, but he wouldn't tell us what it was. And so I've just been poking and prodding at him week to week to see if he'll loosen up and tell me a little bit more about it. And last week I got him to laugh about it. And so I was like, I'm going to get you to tell me about it, Jack. You think you're not, but you're going to tell me one day. It's just humorous. Today, Ron, one of our colleagues, he usually does hey, Ron, it's Scott Abraham from ABC7, WJLA, da-da-da-da-da. This time he just said, oh, hey, Ron, da-da-da-da. He's like, Ron says back to me, he's like, wait, was that Scott Abraham from ABC7, WJLA? Because he didn't do the introduction. And so we find moments to have levity because, we see each other pretty much every single day. There's got to be jokes in there. We have to find ways to make these things funny. The other thing, Twitter. To be honest with you, the Zoom call is a little bit hard, but sometimes I just tweet about guys. And for instance, J.D. McKissick, who used to play for the Lions, now plays for Washington. Just during training camp, I'm tweeting about different stuff that he's doing. I'm trying to pay as much attention to what guys are up to and try to give as much detail. I know a lot of my colleagues will do something really, really quick, but I found that when I do those really detailed tweets, painting a picture, one, the fans really appreciate it because they can kind of see it a little bit better in their head because they're not there. But then number two, the players are paying attention. And this, they're always paying attention. And so I'm certainly mindful of how I frame things. I won't be overly positive, nor will I be overly negative. I try to be as down the middle as humanly possible. But one day at practice, he's like, hey, Rhiannon, and I didn't know he knew my name. He's like, Thank you for that tweet. I really, really appreciate you and like how much you've like really, paid attention to me and like just like been like, just been cool. And I was like, no problem. I was like, appreciate you as well too for shouting me out.
Yeah.
So little things like that.
Nice. How did you first get interested in sports? I know you said you were a tomboy.
I am a tomboy. I started playing basketball when I was 4 years old. I don't know what it was about basketball. I'm trying to think, what was it about basketball that attracted me to it? I don't know. The Houston Comets were doing great things at the time that I started to play. I think it was easy, to be honest with you. I mean, I wasn't going to get into like gymnastics or cheerleading. No disrespect to those, like, to sports, but I wasn't particularly interested in those. Basketball, you can just get a basketball and you can go shoot it. You don't need anybody else to do it with you. And so I got into it that way. And possibly as well, too, the fact that when I got into elementary school, I see all the boys playing it and things of that nature. And I wasn't really interested in running around playing tag all recess. I wanted something that was a little bit more competitive. I've always been competitive. Even as a kid, like as a 5-year-old being competitive like that is crazy to me. But like that was just me. And so the boys would tell me I couldn't play with them. They said girls can't play basketball and also stuff like that. I'm not vindictive. I do make it a point to prove people wrong, though. I will say that. There is nothing that brings me as much joy as someone saying I cannot do something and showing them I very much can. So the point where by the time I finished, this was in elementary school, by the time I finished, I was one of the first people that was picked when we played basketball. But in addition to that, my 5th grade year, we had gone to the county championships. We actually lost, and I was one of the players that like got put in because we had 2 starters that somehow, some way were ineligible because they had played an AAU game. The other team had some parents that did not play right. I'm just going to say that we should have won that championship game. But then the next year, I was so disappointed by the fact that I was like afraid to get in there that I just worked at it all summer essentially. And so I actually got voted as one of the all-stars for my county a long time ago. And we had a 3-point shooting contest. I was involved in that. And also I was on the academic team as well too. Like I said, I was almost a 4.0 student, and that year I was. But it's like one of the few places where you can be upset and like you can actually kind of take it out on somebody. Like you can have some fun with it. It's got a creative element to it. It's freeing, really, more than anything else. I love that about sports. It keeps me in shape. That's a big thing for me as well too. I really like to be physically in shape as well too. It allows me to connect with people that maybe I wouldn't otherwise have a chance to connect with, and I think that's really cool and really important. I mean, I love sports. I love basketball. Shoot, I love weight training as well, too. There used to be this thing in high school called Wednesday Warriors, and I, at one point in my life, could squat 200 pounds until this junior, one of my former basketball teammates, she went up and she squatted 205, and I just looked at her like, you couldn't have given me a week. You just couldn't have given me a week. You're going to be here next year. Come on now. Like, you don't need to do that. But I love it. I love the excitement of it. I love how you can tangibly see progress. I love all of those things. It's so much fun. And so that's how I got into sports.
Nice. You're from Prince George County, which is part of the DC metro area. Repping. Oh, there you go. There you go. How full circle is it covering one of the teams that I presume you grew up watching?
I did grow up watching them, and it's funny because some people were like, oh, were you a fan of the team? And awkwardly enough, I was a Cowboys fan for a time. I'm no longer a Cowboys fan. For people that are watching this, I stopped rooting for the team in like 2016. So But it is really fun because I know this fan base probably better than a lot of people. I grew up in a household full of people that root for the team, and it's funny because they're like, yeah, the year after you, or the year you were born is like the last year that they were really good. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. And people my age don't know this team to be successful. They have been, and that by and large, I think they've been to the playoffs 5 times since 1991, I believe is the case. They just haven't been good. And like, I can sense the frustration. I can sense the beleaguerness of like the fan base and things of that nature. But I also feel the passion of it. I mean, that year when RG3 went off in 2012, that was crazy in the city. I wish you could have been in DC for that, just to see how people were. It was almost like old times, seeing FedEx Field full of people, seeing people excited about the games on Sunday, because from what I understand is that people didn't do things on Sunday except get ready for the games. That was all you did. You were in front of your TV at like 12:30 ready to go for the game, or wherever you needed to be in order to watch it. And I think that that's really cool. One of the things I love about sports is the fan bases. I really, really enjoy that. The quirkiness, the weirdness, the enthusiasm. Because if we're really honest about fandom, at some level, it's an emotional terrorist. It does nothing good for us. I don't know how many times I've watched my favorite team. I'm a Lakers fan. I remember 2004 when they were playing the Pistons and they lost. I was pacing. I was in fourth grade pacing, angry. And I was like, why am I like this? There's no logical reason why we would commit ourselves to it, but it's so much fun for that very reason that it makes no sense whatsoever. But it's awesome how invested people get, how happy people are. I mean, seeing Chiefs fans as happy as they were that they won their first Super Bowl in 50 years, or seeing Cleveland Cavaliers fans winning their first championship. I mean, shoot, the city of Cleveland has been in such a sports drought. It's just so much fun to watch. Even seeing Lakers fans who are used to winning, now having won one in 10 years, how they acted. Yeah. I think it's so awesome. I love that part about it, and like being in my hometown and understanding the very fabric of the fan base itself. It makes it a very unique experience covering the team.
You spent several years at the beginning of your career as the associate editor of The Undefeated, which is an ESPN platform that explores the intersection of race, sports, and culture. How did shaping the content for The Undefeated make you look at sports through a different lens?
Well, I was actually a history minor in Maryland. I've been studying Black history since I was in third grade. I was in this competition called Black Saga. So for years, I've already been very keenly aware of it. And it was just interesting that I had a space to write about it at that point in time, putting those two things together. I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, shoot, I wrote that story about Dave Roberts years ago, talking about him being the second Black manager to win the World Series, and like doing the research, kind of like looking into that kind of stuff. I always found it to be so interesting. And it's so cool when you hear these guys talk about the importance of it, because it does open up those doors for others to follow behind them. Or listening to John Thompson the second saying, you know, after he became the first Black coach to win the NCAA tournament for basketball, talking about like, you know, all we want is just an opportunity to fail. And it's truly just that. I mean, you know, nobody's asking for a handout or anything like that, but you're just looking for the same opportunities that other coaches get, that if they don't succeed, you know, they have the opportunity to fix the mess or whatever the case may be, as opposed to, you know, 1 or 2 years saying, oh, well, that didn't really work. Like Steve Wilkes in Arizona, like getting one season and then getting the boot. I mean, that's not getting an opportunity to fail. So I loved it. I love combining my knowledge of history and sports to write features about that. It was one of the best experiences of my life. I got to travel all around the country to do stories like that. I got to go talk to Dusty Baker about what happened with him in the Nationals when he was not re-signed. I got to talk to Dave Roberts. I got to cover my first World Series. I got to cover my second Stanley Cup. I met a whole bunch of people that to this day I'm still very close to, and I still treasure very much by doing that. I think those conversations need to be had. I think that you're a more informed sports fan when you know those things about the way it works and things of that nature. You have that kind of in the back of your mind at all times. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I thought that was really cool to have that experience.
That makes sense. What have you found to be the biggest difference between writing profiles and covering an entire team or beat like you are with Washington's football team, even though you are doing feature stuff?
The biggest thing is that I used to spend not weeks, I could spend days on a story and there was no problem. Like if I wasn't writing like every single day, it was not a big deal. Beat reporting, it's not that I write every day, like every 2 or 3 days I'll write something, or like, you know, if something comes up newsy, like I'll write about it. But that's really the thing, is that there is that inherent pressure to write something on a fairly regular basis, where with the feature, the idea is you want me to talk to as many people as I possibly can for as long as I need to, just so that you can get the best product out there. I mean, there was one story I did with Brianna Scurry that I talked to her in August of 2017, and I didn't finish this. The story was not up until February of 2018. That was months of work talking to her, and I enjoyed every second of it. I knew I didn't have any pressure or anything else like that. But if I was to do the same thing here, I would feel some pressure. It's just very hard when you have the daily element. There is the process of like talking to sources and being on top of all the stuff that's happening with the team. It makes it very hard to try to carve out space to sit and just like do research, really deep dive in research on a feature story and things of that nature. And I feel just as much pressure in usually a shorter amount of time to come up with the same level, the same quality of product, basically. So that's really the biggest difference, honestly.
Rhiannon, what's been your experience as a Black woman in sports media?
In what regard exactly?
We're in an industry that hasn't always been progressive. It's getting better slowly, but it still has a long way to go. And so at least from other friends and colleagues I talk to that don't look like me, that are minorities and people of color, they have challenges that even though I have had challenges as a woman, I don't necessarily have the same challenges as a white woman that my friends that are Black have had, and that my friends that are Latina have had.
Okay, I see what you're saying. I want to say that, like, my experience has been so unique. I mean, I worked in a newsroom that looked almost exactly like me. When I was at the Undefeated, like, most of the writers were Black. Like, that was the first time that was actually the first time I had Black editors, really, honestly. And that was pretty cool. But previously, up to that point, I don't know. I felt very fortunate, very blessed, actually, that I worked with a lot of people that I didn't feel uncomfortable because of the fact that I was a Black woman at all. And I mean, I really seriously appreciate that throughout my career. Because it is tough. Like, I haven't had comments about my hair. I haven't had comments about my clothes. I haven't had that, to be honest with you. And I don't want to pretend like I have. I mean, quite frankly, I feel like I've blended in really nicely. I mean, I cover a sport that's 70% Black. So, I mean, when I go in the locker room, I'm actually more in the majority than I'm in the minority. Yeah. Now, when I'm talking to, like, coaches and stuff of that nature, obviously the dynamic shifts and stuff like that, or, you know, front office people, that obviously is different. But I have not really, or maybe not to my knowledge, I haven't felt held back because of the fact that I am a Black woman, or even that I'm openly LGBTQ as well too. Like, I have not felt discriminated against in that part. If anything, like, the worst thing, as we talked about, is like the woman element of, like, dealing with people hitting on you and stuff like that. And it's just, it's so silly. It's one of those things where it's like, I do envy men for that reason. I really do. Like, just to be able to walk around and not have to think about that kind of stuff is such a luxury. But I haven't, as a Black woman, I haven't had so many people. Oh, I guess that's not true. I take that back. This year was the first time really that something happened as a result of, like, my Blackness. When I did a Instagram live for The Athletic, I was talking to a player for the New England Patriots. And towards the end of our Instagram live, the last 8 minutes or so, he and I were talking, and there was somebody in the chat who kept calling us the N-word.
Really?
And,
are you serious?
mm-hmm, it was a big to do.
Oh my gosh.
And, like, what was worse is that his 10-month-old son was with, like, in it. People, like, in the comments were like, oh, we want to see his son, da 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 da. And I was like, Brandon, that's up to you. Like, it's your child. So he gets his son, and the person calls him, like, I'm not going to say the word, but they call him, like, the N-word monkey. They call him, like, a skid mark and all this other stuff like that. And I was furious because, more so than calling me that, I was so offended that they had called my guest that, and they had called his child that, because he's a 10-month-old. He has nothing to do with that. And what's worse is that his wife and his mother were watching the chat, and they could see the comments. So I'm sitting there mortified, like, and frankly, my mom was watching too, and she's watching me get called this. So there was a lot of things happening, and I had some people like, why didn't you kill the chat? Because I was like, I think we had like a couple hundred people in the chat, and of those couple hundred people, most of them were all asking really good questions. They were really engaged, and I didn't want to deprive them of getting the questions answered that they had been asking. And I did not think that was fair to them, even though it meant that Brandon and I were more personally uncomfortable, because the 10-month-old doesn't know what's happening. But I didn't feel right killing it, knowing that other people had not done anything, and to deprive them of what they had come for and they've been patient for and everything else like that. I didn't think that was fair at all. And they figured out the stuff with the person and everything else like that. So it was one of those things where it's like, it was actually the first time I've been called the N-word, to be honest with you. I did not expect it to be so public, though. That was tough. And that, you see, like, if I start going down the list of things that have happened this year, Kelly, like, it will be a long list. And when I tell you, like, why, like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, of the different struggles I've had, like, since May, it's just one on top of the other. I mean, probably, let me think. I don't know. When you talk about race, people get really offended and stuff of that nature. And it's really, I don't know why. I don't know why we can't talk about these honest truths that you can look and find facts to substantiate and things of that nature. These aren't matters of opinion to me. Even, for instance, on Veterans Day, I made the point that my grandfather served in the Korean War. So did several of his, my uncles as well, too. And I have several family members who are in it right now. And I point out the fact that, you know, when my grandfather was serving, this is before the Board of Education had passed at the time. I don't think he was in World War II. I don't believe he was in World War II. I could be wrong about that. But he was in the army, and I was like, they had a segregated army. The country was still segregated at the time. He didn't have the same freedoms that he was fighting for abroad. And he could have died. I mean, he could have died fighting for a country that doesn't even give him the same freedoms and, what's the word I want? Respect that he was going elsewhere to provide for others. And so I point these things out because that is a statement of fact. Historically speaking, that is a statement of fact. And I do want to say, like, I especially respect those people who left their homes, left their families to go do things for others, because that's a different level of selflessness. Even though, of course, there was the draft and things of that nature, like you're kind of obligated to go. But for the most part, save for that experience, my Blackness has not been a point of topic or ridicule so far in my career.
I'm really glad to hear that. What do you think people like myself, a white woman like myself, what are the types of things that I can be doing to better support you, to better support other women and people of color, and to just continue to advocate for our industry to make progressive change?
I think to a certain extent is that there's a currency with the close proximity to whiteness. Like, obviously as a white woman, like, you don't have the same privilege as a white man, but you do have your whiteness working for you. And so part of it is listening. Like, one of the things that sometimes I get frustrated with athletes is, like, instead of maybe listening to the organizers of people who have been on the ground talking about the issues, like, they think they know exactly what it is. And instead of bringing those people into the room to, like, actually talk about those things, like, they discuss it, it's kind of derailing the same movement you're trying to help. I would simply say to that vein is that it is talking to your friends. I mean, as long as they're, like, comfortable having those conversations, it is talking. And it's also listening. A lot of it is listening more than anything else. And it's not undermining what a group has done. For instance, I don't know if you saw Eva Longoria's interview the other day.
I did.
Yeah. And that was pretty mortifying. And, like, you could literally see the numbers of, like, how Black women really saved us here in Georgia. And she's like, but the Latino women, I'm like, Latino women did do a great job. It's just they didn't do it to the same numbers that Black women did. And that's one of those things where it's like, that but element of things. That's tough when you're talking about the one group and then you try to give shine to the other group. No one is, denigrating white women or Latino women or Asian women or anything else like that. We're just happen to be talking about this one particular group here. That's a lot of it. It's listening, it's acknowledging it, it's bringing it up, it's being comfortable and also uncomfortable talking about it as well too. And quite frankly, it's more, sometimes it's not even about talking to us, it's about talking to people that are in your life that have these views that are unsubstantiated or that are racist or that are, like, we're talking about, race right now, but, like, homophobic or things of that nature, and just saying to them, like, that's baseless, that's unacceptable, like, that's not something you should be doing type of a situation. But it's really challenging those people more than anything else, because I promise you, me talking to that person is not going to go anywhere. I've tried, believe me, I've tried many times. It has gone nowhere. But maybe because you're closer to them, maybe because you look like them, they would be more accepting of you coming from you, basically. So using that privilege that you have, that they will listen to you, essentially. That's a lot of it, because if you think it's uncomfortable for you to have the conversation, how uncomfortable do you think it is for me to be the person to bring up this conversation this whole time?
I'm sure it's highly uncomfortable. That's good advice. Thank you. You're an active member of NABJ, the National Association of Black Journalists, as well as AWESOME, the Association for Women in Sports Media. What kind of value have you found in both of those organizations?
Just having sounding boards, really, sometimes just talking to people helps. And I found a lot of deep-rooted friendships, deep-rooted mentorships within those organizations. And that's the whole point. And to honestly, even somewhat to the previous question, is like seeing how people have treated me who are a step above or a couple steps above, and seeing them reach back to help me so that I could get my foot in the door, because they know that they have that power or that sway or whatever the case may be. I mean, I do that all the time. I talk about this all the time. It's like, if you have the time and the means to go back and to talk to people, to talk to students, to help them, you should do that. That's what I've learned being in those organizations, is the importance of mentorship, of paying it forward. I truly, genuinely believe in those things. No matter how tired I am, if somebody asks me to talk to a class, I'll probably talk to a class. Like, I had to be dog tired to not talk to a class of students. And I give them my email, I give them my number and stuff like that, because I remember when people did that for me, and they trusted me not to abuse the number, not to abuse the email and things of that nature, to make it happen, essentially. And that's it's that solidarity when I go to Awesome and I talk to women who are in Awesome, like just that deep sigh of relief of like knowing what it feels like to be a woman. Like I said, it's like we're talking about going up to talk to a guy, getting numbers and stuff like that. They already know. We already know how that feels. That deep anxiety of like, I'm only asking for your number for business reasons. I am not interested in you in any other way, shape, or form. They get it. I don't have to explain that feeling away. The same thing goes with NABJ. Like just how tired a lot of us were after everything with George Floyd. I don't have to explain that feeling to them. Some people really don't get how much of a challenge it was to go to work after all of the unrest, after all of the protests, because my blackness at some level is seen as a threat to people. And it's like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just existing in the world. It's nice to have that unstated understanding between people that get it. And that's one of the things I love about it. That's one of the things I'll tell people all the time, like, you should be in this organization. You'll find people that want to help you, that want to mentor you, that, you know, are not trying to like take advantage of you and things of that nature. And then make sure that when you get the help that you're looking for, you go back and give it to somebody else as well too, who's in your shoes. That's what I found with Awesome and with NABJ to be the most helpful things in those organizations.
In doing my research on you, I discovered that you have an extensive Disney VHS collection. What is the backstory?
Well played. I do. I have 65 cassettes, actually.
What's the backstory?
I'm a huge Disney fan. I actually have a Snow White poster in my childhood bedroom, actually. And my mom, she had, when I went to work at ESPN, there's this Goofy, Minnie, and this Mickey little figurines that she always had at her job. She used to work at US Customs. She gave it to me as a gift when I first started working at ESPN, because obviously it's owned by Disney, and I thought that was one of the coolest gifts ever. I'm a big kid at heart. Always loved the movies. I'm somewhat of a hopeless romantic as well too, and like always seeing those movies, they always worked out in the end. I love the music as well too. Sometimes I like to sing every now and then. I'm not terrible depending on the song, but not a lot of songs though. So, but I love how it makes me feel like a kid again. I really do. And it just takes me back to a good place. I used to watch Snow White apparently all the time, to the point where I got mad at my mom one time, and I was like a little kid, and I called her Queen because my association with the Queen is she's bad, and she makes, you know, Snow White feel bad and stuff like that. And I thought that was kind of funny. My mom and dad got me a snow globe from Hercules. It's I can't pick a favorite. Like, I will refuse to ever pick a favorite. It's like one of my favorite Disney movies, but Hercules. And it's the song I Won't Say I'm in Love, because for the longest time, I was not the most emotional kid for a long time. Saying I love you and things of that nature, no bueno. But I'm an evolved person now. I do. I show a lot of affection at this point in my life. So it's just a good feeling. It's like, I literally feel like it's sometimes the most magical place on earth. I've been to Disneyland. I've been to Disney World. Hopefully I get to go to Disney World Paris and all the other ones as well too. But that's really it. My parents bought them, and now they're mine. My sister may argue that she gets half of them, but she's not.
I had an extensive collection of Disney glass figurines that I collected growing up. And I finally this summer, I visited my parents a couple times in Arizona, and my mom wanted me to clean out my childhood room and closet and all the stuff. And I finally said, okay, I think you can, you know, give these Disney figurines just because I don't have room for them, and I don't know where I'd put them in my house. They would just sit in a box. But I mean, it was hard to like be like, okay, take the Disney figurines, because they were so much a part of growing up. And I mean, I collected them for years.
Exactly. I had a great childhood, and maybe that's what it is that I had a really great childhood, and I always associated with my childhood. Like, I'd sit in front of the TV in my parents' computer room and just put the VHS in, and I sit and watch them, you know, all day. I mean, a lot of them have really good messages and things of that nature as well too. So I mean, that was something when I was in, I think, was it art history class, or maybe it was English? I don't know. We were breaking down one of the movies, and I was like, wait a second, hold up. We were breaking down Beauty and the Beast, and they were talking about like the societal, like the beast, like societally being like the more sensitive man. I was like, whoa, okay, all right, y'all. I was like, this movie is going to continue to say my childhood movie. I don't want to get into the societal breakdown of this right now. Like, this is a lot. I was like, Gaston is like the overly match. I was like, I was like, keep that over. It's interesting now looking at like what the movies like mean and represent, but like I was like in high school and I was like, no, we're not doing this right now, y'all.
You could really be considered the intern queen. You intern for I was blown away at the list. The Dallas Morning News, Chicago Tribune, WUSA 9, Washington Post, Houston Chronicle, USA Today Sports, the Oklahoman, and the Baltimore Sun. What advice do you have for young journalists for making the most of your internships? Because you clearly did.
Like I said, I'm very goal oriented, very competitive. And if I'm really, really honest with you, I did a lot of those internships because I wanted to, but also because I got fired from my school paper and they told me I wasn't a good writer. And so I wanted to prove a point at that. Like I said, it was like, I'm not vindictive. It's just, I did something that was good for my career anyways. But that was it. I mean, I wanted to get experiences. I wanted to travel. I wanted to go places. And the way that you do it is that you're aggressive. When I was at NABJ, the way I got that internship is I went to NABJ and I talked to Monique Walker Jones while I was there. They had an opening for somebody to like basically monitor stuff with the Ravens game on social media, essentially. And so I reached out to her about that, but she was like, we could offer you an internship though. And I said, I could do that. And the amount of cool things that I got to do as a result. I mean, I covered, when Maryland went to the Big Ten, I was in that A1 story as a sophomore.
Wow.
I'm a very go-getter, aggressive, goal-oriented person. And I wanted to be great at it. I went to the Oklahoma and I worked with Mike Sherman. I got 95 stories done. And he will tell you to this day, we just talked like 2 weeks ago, I'm still upset about the fact I didn't get 100. In 3 months, I was shooting for 100 if I possibly could. I loved it. I thoroughly enjoyed my experiences. And so what I would say to interns is like, that is your opportunity to go outside of wherever you are. For me, home is Washington, D.C. And I really, really, really wanted to see what else was out there. I was always interested in Chicago. I was always interested in Dallas. Like I said, I was a fan of the Cowboys for a long time in my life. And so I wanted an opportunity to go out there. And same thing with Houston. It was another city I've never been to. And I got a chance to experience Texas for the first time doing that particular internship. And I loved Oklahoma City. I mean, you got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And I went places where I didn't necessarily know people. I mean, I had family in the last 3 places. So Chicago, Houston, and Dallas, I had family there. But I was loving it being by myself. I found myself probably more so than I ever did when I was necessarily at college or anywhere else, because I really was by myself and I had to figure out what did I like to do. And I really found out I like going out by myself a lot. It's one of my favorite pastimes, actually. I take myself out to eat on a fairly regular basis.
Good for you.
But it's about networking. Every single one of those internships, I could tell you exactly who helped me get those internships. That's the thing. And it's about, one, talking to people, but it's also about doing the work and following through so that the next time you can go to the next place and then you can go to the next place after that. That's what I would say to people who are interested in it is, one, don't be scared to go somewhere that you've never been before. But then number 2, when you get there, do the work. Don't be the intern that makes it hard for another intern. And to your point about being a Black woman and like whether I've had a hardship, I haven't had a hardship, but I have been mindful of the fact that I don't want someone to look at me and say, we had this one Black woman intern and like she didn't do a very good job. And so like now they're suddenly worried about hiring other ones. Oh no, I will not be the excuse for you to not be able to bring in somebody else. That's not going to be me. If anything, you'd be like, maybe we should bring in more, if anything else. She seemed very motivated. It's like, I had a chip on my shoulder. I mean, I always have and I always will. One of the good things about me is I don't really relax. One of the bad things about me is I don't really relax. And so it's like a constant adrenaline rush, but I think it's worked out all right.
Yeah, I'd say it definitely has worked out all right. Rhiannon, is there anything I haven't asked you or we haven't covered that you want to talk about or share?
No, I think you did a great job with this, Kelly. I think we've had our moments of levity, seriousness. I think you hit all the right tones. I really do. This has been a tremendous interview. I've really enjoyed it. I really have enjoyed it. And I really appreciate you again for taking the time to have me on. This means a great deal to me, especially, like I said, sometimes that feeling of like I'm not doing enough, it just like kind of hearing you run some stuff back, it's like, oh yeah, I did do that. Like I need to stop being so hard on myself. And I appreciate you for this conversation and kind of coming to that realization as well too.
Yeah, no, you definitely need to give yourself some I understand the chip on the shoulder thing because I sort of have always had that kind of approach too, but you definitely need to give yourself some grace because you've accomplished an incredible amount, especially at your age. So
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm trying to be better about that. That is something my therapist and I talk about a lot, actually. So I'm trying. I'm going to work on it. I
Yeah,
am.
it's a journey. So, well, thank you for taking the time, first of all, to do this, especially in the middle of your NFL season, because I know how busy it gets for you, but I really appreciate it. And you have such a magnetic personality. So it's been so fun to hear all the different things that we got to cover in this interview.